You're listening to the Thoughts for Living podcast, coming to you from the birthplace of the Civil Rights Movement, Montgomery, Alabama. Hello, Elizabeth. Welcome to the show. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You could call in or you can type in. But that's the state that we're in right now. And I'm not sure that everyone realizes the urgency of this moment. I was talking to a friend, some friends, and they were saying like, well, I mean, what are you talking about, man? We already live in a racist society. I mean, we're already being shot and killed wholesale. I mean, we already last in every demographic of humanity, politically, socially, and economically. I mean, how could it be any worse? And I suggest that the real threat, we could say that today because we were one vice president away from a coup d'etat. Had Pence gone along with the program, Trump would have been in office, and you can see now that if he had stayed in office, he wasn't ever going to come out, right? So we are watching before us people establish a autocratic dictatorship in the United States, and they're going to set it up legally. Now, I really believe we can go either way. It's very tenuous. It could go either way. And I think it is mandatory that Black and brown people and people of goodwill do again what we did in 2020. No, we have not been given credit, the citizenry, right? Because if you remember, Trump was saying then, even though he didn't believe the pandemic was any good, right? He was telling folks, wait till April and it was just going to disappear. But he was advocating for delaying the vote. He didn't want to have elections. And he was using the pandemic as an excuse not to have the elections. Same pandemic that we shouldn't be afraid of, that we find out later when the writer interviews Trump, that he knew it was serious, but he said he didn't want to panic the people in a pandemic, okay? Right? And so what was phenomenal, right? If you remember at first, he put his boy, DeJoy, over the U.S. Postal Service. And DeJoy started his machinations, right? Closing down centers, moving voting, the stuff that tallies, right? Slowing down the mail, right? And then he started talking down early voting. And so our seniors said, we need to early vote. And they did in record numbers. And then the other thing we weren't given credit for was all of the younger people who stood in line for hours to cast a vote in a pandemic. And we were so successful, we elected senators in the state of Georgia that had never been elected before. Took control of the House, took control of the Senate. And I'm saying to you, brothers and sisters, we got to do it again. Not in 24, but in 22. Because if the Republicans get control in 22, they're going to set the table for a legal coup d'etat, a legal takeover of the United States so that it will operate in a dictatorship and authoritarianism, thoroughly reifying and thoroughly promoting white supremacy. without any makeup, raw. And my friends will say, well, we're already under that. I say, but look, we're not living under authoritarian military dictatorship. What's that place? Myanmar? What happened in Myanmar when the military took over? You heard about the Rohingya? Huh? They started killing those people and they had to run for their lives. Do you think a white racist military government in the United States is going to let black and brown people just go whistling by? Please. You don't know history. You're right, Elizabeth. They are still trying to do it. But we're going to do what we did before, Elizabeth. We're going to the polls. But we have to alert some of our brothers and sisters who, and you know historically, right? The midterms always supposedly go against the party that's in power. We have to take the 2022 midterms as serious as we take presidential elections. We have to turn out in more numbers than we turned out for 2020 because we know that this now we're going to be saying it. We're trying to stop the steal, right? Because they totally flipped the script, right? This is the State of the Union. And I wish it were not. And I wish, we could look at it a different way, but we got to be real. We got to be real. It's just the grace of God. And if you want to know the truth, that's the blessing. I know I am saddened by all of the lives that were lost through the pandemic. And because of some of the machinations of the government, people died who didn't have to die. But think of this. It was because of the pandemic that some of these Republican-controlled legislatures amended their rules to allow for early voting. This is what the Trump administration was trying to take to court. They were saying, now look, they want states' rights now, but when states said that they wanted to amend their voting policies so that people would have a better chance of voting during a pandemic, the Trump administration said, no, that's wrong. Right? But had not those states amended their policies due to the pandemic, I dare say the former administration would have been reelected. I mean, as bad as the pandemic was and still is for those who are unvaccinated, the blessing, it kept Trump out of office. And black and brown people and their European allies going to the polls in record numbers. We're going to have to do it again. We got 22. We got to do it again. We've been talking about critical race theory and voter suppression and the need for us to turn out in record numbers in 2022. If you want to read more about this, you can read the actual article that's on thoughtsforliving.com. Go to thoughtsforliving.com and you'll see, click on their intellectual work, and then you'll see a article or a paper, a white paper on critical race theory and voter suppression. If you want to know more about the actual progression that we've gotten to where critical race theory is being demonized and how Republican political operatives are using that to get support, to gain support for voter suppression tactics being implemented through legislation across states. You can read more about that at thoughtsforliving.com. We're about 58 minutes into the first session, and what we're going to do, I want to put a little bow around this. We want to talk about ecological consciousness theory. This is the lens that we're using to do the analysis that we've been talking about for the last hour. Why is it that critical race theory would be used as a tool to promote voter suppression? Critical race theory was developed by African Americans, particularly we call the father of critical race theory Derek Bell, but it was really Kimberly Crenshaw who developed the real ideas around it. They used, and others, I should say, and you had Matsuda, Delgado, Solizano, all of these researchers who have worked in critical race theory, legal scholars who developed this. And that's particularly why it's been used, because it's black, right? And so we want to use a wedge between black people and white people, but then you get an issue that's supposed to be, pro-black, that's undermining so-called the narrative, the European American narrative that is constantly promoted, right? That we are a democracy, that we believe in fairness and equity, that we believe in meritocracy, and that we're some kind of light on a hill for all the rest of the world to emulate. That's the narrative that has been promoted the majority of my adult life, and I would suggest just even trying to be generous. I'll give you that, just being generous. But there's another side to that story. That story is white settler colonization of this continent. That is the enslavement of black people from Africa in this country. That is the internment of Asian peoples in camps during World War II. The genocide against Native American peoples. That too is a part of the American project. And it's the part of the American project that some in this country don't want taught because, according to the legislation, they don't want to feel bad because great-great-granddaddy was a Klansman. Well, I can't help that he chose to be a Klansman. And a lot of lynchings went on. And a lot of lynchings still going on. We saw one with George Floyd. I was really encouraged by all of the solidarity that came across races and across ages. Now, we need to carry that kind of solidarity on to vote in 2022. And I'm hoping it will. But now, I've lived long enough that I've seen that before, right? That, people come alongside African Americans and people of color at one moment, but then, when they use that wedge issue, then, people go running for the white side. How am I able to say that? I use ecological consciousness theory, right? So here's a short version. Ecological consciousness theory, short version. First people on the planet, Africans, right? They realized it was safety in numbers. So they valued a group, right? They knew they needed to meet food, clothing, shelter, right? And in this day and time, it would include transportation, internet access. In order to get those things, they work together. So two values come off immediately. They valued the group and they valued working together. The first people that ever walked on the earth, from whom we get everybody else, right? Because, race is a social construction. There's really no such thing as race. But Europeans came up with it in order to justify the exploitation of black and brown people, right? But the first people on the planet were Africans, and from those Africans come everybody else. So there's no such thing as pure white because the first people weren't white. The first people were Africans, Negroid, okay? That's history. That's the truth. And then those people developed They lived a life of recognizing that life was an interrelated symbiotic network, right? Because they know, ooh, I need fresh air. Ooh, I need fresh water, right? I need the plant life on land and in the water. I need the animal life on land and in the water in order to live. So they saw themselves as a part of a living network, right? And they lived that way. At first, of course, they were hunter-gatherers, right? They had to follow the herds, or they had to go and pick berries and things. But over time, they developed what? Agriculture. And that was the big jump. Now I can stay in one place. I can plant a crop, stay right here. Don't have to follow the herds. I can domesticate animals. I can put them in a pen, right? So this was a big jump for humanity. Developing agriculture, developing animal husbandry, right? And out of this, they come to understand, oh, wait a minute, wait. I see my animals make other animals, and I put this seed in the ground, and it makes other crops. And then in my own body, me and this woman, we're able to make children. Oh, I'm a created being. Oh, so then there must be a creator. And they develop an idea of God, of spirituality, right? So much so today, right? Most religions, I don't care what it is, they accept that there's a what? Life after death. That comes from our people. Life after death, okay? And not only is there just life after death, what did they start doing? They started burying their folk in the ground, and what? They put their stuff in the ground. So that when I go over yonder, what? I'll have my stuff. Now, that's an elementary way of thinking, but it shows their understanding, right? That there was life after death. And they saw it as bifurcated too. They saw a good afterlife, and they saw a negative, the underworld. So we get the concepts of what? Heaven and hell. So spirituality comes from those same people, from living in conjunction with each other, working together, living in conjunction with the earth, living in conjunction with the animal life and the plant life. They see life as a interrelated symbiotic relationship of which they are dependent upon and live within, right? And the outcome of living that way, according to ecological consciousness theory, is personhood. The object was to create good people. You may agree with me. My mother, she didn't care whether I was a janitor or custodian. She didn't care whether I was a police officer. You know what she wanted? She wanted me to be a good person. She wanted me to reflect the values that I had been taught in home and that reflect my community. Now that's what we call the interrelated value system, right? Ancient value system that comes from the first people on the planet. Now, we got another value system, according to ecological consciousness theory. It appears around the Enlightenment period, 17th century Enlightenment period. And what happens then? The European male says, no longer is the group important. What becomes important? The individual. Individual is the most important thing. And how does this individual relate to the world? Competition. So not the group and not collaboration. You get the antithesis of that, the individual and competition. And then they add to that because, the whole idea coming out of Darwin, right? Survival of the fittest, right? It's a dog-eat-dog world, right? That's the way they viewed the world. And of course, if it's a dog-eat-dog world, if we're competing against each other, there is no ethical or moral component. So they believe in secularism, right? Right? Because we're competing for food. So I shouldn't have to hand you, share with you, right? We competed. I get the food, I eat it all. If I got to kill you to get the food, I got to have it. So much so, did y'all hear Trump Jr. saying the other day, he spoke and said that he thought that that the Republicans got to let go of this turn the other cheek. He's basically saying to the Republican Party, y'all got to quit being religious because that's holding us back. You know why? Because we're treating the opposition as though they're not the enemy. This is what we're being told now. So you got individualism, competition, secularism, and what's the outcome of that kind of lifestyle? Personal achievement, right? Don't care what you got to do, lie, steal, kill, whatever you have to do to get status, do it, and you're supposed to be respected. Now, these two ideas, according to ecological consciousness theory, are at war. And I only think one is sustainable. Going forward, the only way that humanity can remain on the planet is by valuing each other, working together, recognizing spirituality so that we create a culture, right, that produces good people. As opposed to individualism, competition, secularism, and personal achievement. That's the reason why we're in the state that we're in now, right? Right? Supreme Court gives personal status to a corporation. Corporation says, I want to go and chop off the top of this mountain. I don't care if you can't drink no water after I chop off the top of this mountain. You move. It's my right. It's my individual right to make money. Okay? I set up my business and I can spew all the gas I want. You can't breathe, your child got asthma, move. Tough. It's my right. And that's the reason why, too, we couldn't come together on something during the pandemic like wearing a mask, right? Because we got the European worldview is individual rights. So you got white people talking about it's my right not to wear a mask. It's my right not to get vaccinated. It is your right. But the problem is that it's not just you. If you were living somewhere on an island, like, what's that movie? Castaway. Yeah, if you're on an island talking to a daggum volleyball or a soccer ball. Yeah. But the whole point is that when your choice negatively impacts other people, you have to think about that. Now, matter of fact, and I'm going to touch on this and we're almost through. See, that's what true spirituality is about. True spirituality, true Christianity, based on the teachings of Christ, always puts the other, always considers the other before oneself, right? Particularly those who are less fortunate than one, right? But now the opposite of that is individualism, right? You know the story about the one that had a problem with God getting all the glory, right? What's the deal here? I want my way. I want to do my thing, right? And we talk individualism. Nothing in life lives individually. Tell me something in life that lives disconnected from the rest of life. I'll wait. Nothing. You pull a tree out of the ground, it dies. You take a fish out of the water, it dies. We are an interrelated system. And so any value system that teaches individualism, that teaches separation from the rest of life is satanic in nature. I said it. It's satanic in nature. It's ungodly because it's not about life. It's not about promoting the good of everyone. It's totally selfish and self-centered. And I don't know one mother that taught her child that the way I want you to be is a self-centered, and I'm at the other piece of it. Nobody teaches their child to do that, but we learn that in this system, right? Individualism, competition, no morality, no ethics, secularism. So I can do what I want to do, say what I want to say, and dare you to say something about it because it's my individual rights. Well, I got news for you. It's more us than it is of you. And we're going to do again what we did in 20. We're going to the polls in 22, and we're going to thwart a dictatorship and an authoritarian white supremacist government in this nation. I think that's the way to go. What about you, Elizabeth? What about you, Zia Cruz? I think that's the way to go. We really appreciate you taking time to join us today. Hopefully, we'll be right back here, probably at a later time. What you want? Elizabeth Farr said, I completely agree. Well, I'm with you, sister. And so what we're going to do, we're going to embody what we're talking about. We're going to engage people in our sphere of influence, right? And we're going to share with them the importance of us executing and demonstrating our constitutional rights. And as we make sure that we vote, prior to voting, we're going to be demanding that the U.S. modify or eliminate the filibuster so that we can enact federal legislation to attempt to thwart states' rights and the ability of those who would like to establish a legal way to overturn a legitimate electoral process. I think it's more of us than it is of them. For more, please go to thoughtsforliving.com. And we hope that you enjoyed the Thoughts for Living podcast